Good morning, everyone. I am Tom Banke with Forward Community Investments, and I would like to welcome you to the 2013 Building Nonprofit Sustainability, a Financial Learning Series kickoff webinar for the Milwaukee cohort. We recommend using your computer's audio to listen in, but you can also dial into the call via phone using the dial-in number and access code listed on the slide that you are currently seeing now. First off, I'd like to go through the agenda for today's webinar. We'll welcome everyone. We'll go through thanking our sponsors, have a little bit of information about Forward Community Investments, a little bit of information on our baseline evaluation, a general overview of the learning series, an introduction to pre-work reading that we'd like to have you take care of before our next session starts next week, and then at the end we'll open it up for questions and answers. So I'd like to hand it over to Ben, who will be thanking our sponsors.
Great, thank you, Tom. This is Ben Williams from Forward Community Investments. I'd want to start with just thanking everyone at the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, Catherine, Janelle, Darlene, and their whole team. They have been incredibly supportive of us and of this series. When we were reviewing applications, we had over 45 different organizations apply, and it was a very difficult decision to come to who we would welcome into the cohort, but they were excited about every single one that has been selected and are really excited for you to have this opportunity to move forward. And so if you do run into any of them in the next few days before the series or during the day, please be sure to thank them. We really appreciate them. Without their help, we wouldn't be able to put on this series, and so really we're truly indebted.
Great. Well, thanks, Ben. Right now I'd like to give a little bit of background information about Forward Community Investments. We are a community loan fund that builds capacity in nonprofits across the state through low-cost loans and expert advisory services. As the most established financial management advisor of its kind in Wisconsin, FCI provides its clients with guidance, resources, skills, and capacity building as a means of building a strong, secure, and sustainable statewide nonprofit community. Our vision is a strong, secure, and sustainable nonprofit community throughout Wisconsin. We transform communities by building capacity in mission-based organizations through leveraging lower-cost capital, expert advisory services, and timely resources. We do this with integrity and through a commitment to excellence by being good stewards and in a foundation of both innovation and collaboration. For those of you who aren't familiar with FCI, let me tell you a little bit about us and the work that we do. FCI has been around for almost 20 years. We are chartered by the U.S. Treasury as a Community Development Financial Institution, or a CDFI. Historically, as a CDFI, we are a lender providing access to capital to nonprofits serving low to moderate income individuals. We have also provided training and technical assistance to borrowers, and over the last few years expanded that learning and development beyond borrowers to formalize it into advisory services. Today, our organization is delineated into 4 areas: advisory services, investments, lending services, and research initiatives. Advisory services, including learning like this series, and one-to-one advising in the areas of capacity building, financial assessment, business planning, and strategy development. As a CDFI, we need to raise capital to lend. Investments earn a competitive rate of return, and our investors include financial institutions, nonprofits, religious organizations, and socially responsible individuals. As I mentioned, we are known as a lender, providing access to capital through attractive terms and/or conditions that conventional lenders typically won't consider. We offer both loans and lines of credit for new construction, acquisition and rehabilitation of existing facilities, leasehold improvements, pre-development, equipment, and working capital. FCI has engaged in research initiatives over the last 5 years as well, producing a statewide nonprofit economic impact report that Ben will be referencing shortly. Last year, FCI merged with the Wisconsin Community Fund, a grassroots grant-making organization, in order to expand our ability to impact communities by integrating lending, advising, and grant-making services. So, enough about us. let's go ahead and start learning about who's in the cohort today by using some of the tools in GoToMeeting. Please answer the following poll question about your role with the organization that you will be representing. So at this time, please use the tools in GoToMeeting and select if you are an executive director, a staff member, or a board member of the organization that you are representing for the learning series.
Great, and it looks like almost everyone's voted, and we have about 35 to 40% are executive directors, and the remainder are staff members. We're really excited to have you all here. We hope that some board members will be attending the sessions as well. Just as a note, I don't think we mentioned before, we're recording this webinar, and we'll be sending out this as well as the slides and an overview document about the series that you can send to other members of your teams, whether they be staff or board that will be attending the sessions, just to give them a bit of an orientation as well. Great. So now I want to ask a question, and feel free to submit any of your goals or things that you'd like to get out of this series as we go. We'll be going through an overview of each of the sessions, so that may be an appropriate time. But we're really interested in understanding, before our first session begins, what you most want to get out of the learning series. So if you use the question feature, you can submit in what your goals are, what questions you have, whether they be for today and logistics, or if they be for what's going to be covered in each of the sessions, and we'll be able to answer those in the Q&A. You know, we've booked about an hour of time for this kickoff webinar, but I believe it'll probably take less than that. But we wanted to make sure we had enough time just in case there were questions. So we'll likely be able to get you out to lunch sooner than that. But please, at the end of the day, we'll have a time to review each of these questions that people submit. So just as a broad overview of what's included in the Financial Learning Series, I'll walk through a little bit of background on how we got to today, and then get into depth on what's going to be included in the series. As Tom mentioned, our advisory services expanded from providing technical assistance to just borrowers in about 2010, and we started working with non-borrowers on topics of capacity building and financial topics that are core to what we do at FCI. In 2011, we expanded that into offering more and more workshop sessions like this learning series that we'll be offering here. And in 2012, last year, we had our first year of the Financial Learning Series where we combined those into 5 sessions that kind of comprehensively cover things about looking at your organization as a whole, and then moving through your budget, program costs, cash flow, and then how to look at your organization over a long period of time and its financial sustainability. This year we added a 6th session on strategy because we found in our research that Tom had briefly mentioned before that organizations that have an active strategic plan are more often to report feeling financially secure and financially healthy. And so a lot of this series is taking what we've learned in our surveys and research and trying to apply that to give you those tools. And so there'll be a classroom learning aspect, which is what happens during the sessions, where we'll begin by introducing those topics and talking about how we see the best practices go. And then we're also going to be focusing very closely on how these topics relate to your organization and how you can apply it to them. We want you to leave each day with some concepts, ideas, and tools for how you can apply the learning to your organization. And we illustrate that through a case study, which is actually a borrower of ours that we've sanitized and changed the name and some of the financial information to keep it anonymous. But we've used that as an example to illustrate how these tools and resources can be applied to your organization, how it can make you a more effective nonprofit and reach your mission impact at a greater amount. Tom mentioned that there's going to be some pre- and post work. We'll send out a couple links to articles to read before our session next week. These are to give you some broad introductions to some of the foundational goals, and I'll talk about those articles near the close of the day. We'll also be sending quite a few tools and resources that you can look at after the sessions, and in particular, these tools and resources for how to apply it. So when we go through looking at your budget and how do we create a program-based budget, or how do we project our cash flow, we'll provide you with tools and templates that you can use so you can actually apply it in your organization. We want to make sure this is as tangible and usable as possible. Another aspect of the Financial Learning Series is the individual coaching. Beyond during the sessions when we want you to focus on how I can use this in my organization, we want to take time to really work with you individually on a one-on-one basis to discuss those topics and questions that are most burning in your mind for your organization. And we'll be scheduling that after several of the sessions and then also following the series to make sure that you're able to follow up and apply some of these tools and that we can answer your questions. Beyond those structured coaching sessions, we have an open door policy where if you do have questions about any topics, whether they're ones we cover or ones that are just present in your organization, that you can feel free to reach out to us and we'll set up a time to talk and review either the days of the sessions or via phone or webinar like today to really talk about those. And the last area to focus on is the virtual leadership series. In addition to the actual in-house content that we do, we provide a webinar typically every month where we bring in thought leaders from different topic areas to talk about different issues. And we strongly encourage that you attend those and listen to those. We find them to be a great resource and a great pool for thinking of things. On the bottom of this page, there's a quote from a book about what sustainability means. And when we look at it as FCI and also what we really describe in the series is that it encompasses both the financial sustainability of how are we going to meet our resource needs, but also our mission impact and our program sustainability. If our programs aren't relevant and they're not making an impact in the community, then we've missed the mark as nonprofit organizations. And so it's really how do we combine reaching those mission goals of serving our clients, constituents, and communities, as well as being able to do it financially sustainable so that we can be here 5, 10 years down the line and making an even greater impact. One of the most common questions that we receive early on is who should attend these sessions from my organization? And so just in general, as an overview, we recommend that there's 2 to 3 members of your team, whether they be the director, staff members, or board members, attend each session. The more people from your organization that can learn together and at once, the easier it is to champion that and move it into the whole organization for people that aren't there. Typically, the executive director will attend every one of the sessions, and they'll be kind of the constant. But then for the other leaders, whether they be finance managers, program staff leaders, or board members, that can be a rotating course. So it doesn't have to be the same person attending each session, although we do recommend at least one attend all of them. So when we describe what each of these sessions that we'll be going into include, think about who in my organization would best benefit from being here at the different days. One other just point to note is that we really take evaluation seriously in our organization to understand what kind of impact we can have and how can we continuously improve the services we're providing. So at the beginning of the day next week when we meet, we're going to provide a baseline evaluation for you to fill out. And this is really about where is my organization today, how confident am I in my understanding of these different topic areas, and how do I use them now? This really helps provide us with the information to tailor what we do in the sessions to fit your organization's needs. And so we want to make sure we keep everything as relevant and clear for you as possible. And so this baseline evaluation is our way of measuring and assessing where we are as a cohort. And then we'll be following up with a final evaluation after the last session to see what changes have occurred from the first time we met to now 6 or 7 months down the road later. And then we'll have another evaluation 6 months after the series is over to see how have things gone now that you're kind of on working on these issues yourself. And so we'll bring that on the first day session, but we want to just let everyone know that that's going to be about the first half hour or so of the day. So this slide has a list of each of the sessions that we're providing as well as the date. And so we'll be meeting next week, August 13th, to talk about building capacity in your organization and understanding where is my organization today and where am I going. Our next session in September is on integrating strategy into your organization, and so we'll review some broad general concepts about strategy building, then also specifically look at a model that we ascribe to, and we work in our individual consulting with nonprofit organizations on strategy development. Sessions 3, 4, 5, and 6 are where we really get into the more finance-heavy topics of budgeting, calculating program costs, managing cash flow, and then the dashboards. The putting fun in finance is really looking at those metrics that measure our financial sustainability and mission impact over a longer period of time. Those are sessions, those last 4, that are really good to have the lead finance person from your organization attend. But it's also really nice to have different board members come in so they understand what are those challenges that are facing our organization, and really helps illuminate those conversations that happen at the board level. So I'll take the next bit of time to go through each of these sessions in a little more detail and taking a look at the agenda so you get a sense of what we're going to be covering in each of these topics. So next week on the building capacity, we're really going to look at what are those tools to understand our current position and discover strategies for effectively measuring your impact. I believe the content on this might be off. Really, the building capacity session is about focusing on your organization as a whole comprehensively and using an assessment tool to understand what are those areas of strength and what are those areas of opportunity that we can work on going forward, and what kind of actions can we take to really improve it. This is a great session to bring your board members to as well as staff, because I think it's a very comprehensive, broad picture of the organization. The second session on strategy development is really about how do we plan for what we're going to be doing both within this year and long term. And so we look at the budget and the finances as really the strategic plan of an organization translated into finance. And so how do we integrate what we do in the plan with what happens in our budgeting process is really a key part. And so we'll focus a bit on how do we use the strategic process we call the real-time strategic planning model to integrate that thinking on a day-to-day basis, as opposed to just a plan that you develop and then it's stagnant over the period of time that it's developed for. So we really look at how do we use this to think about the challenges that come up on a day-to-day and a week-to-week basis, because frankly, when you set a plan on day 1, 30 to 60 days later, the types of challenges and questions change because the environment that we're working in has changed so much. So how do we really work in a way that's more fluid and consistent is key. The third session on budgeting is really taking a look at each of the different types of budgets that exist. How do we use them? We focus on adopting a mission-based approach to budgeting, which is not just looking at the income and expenses that go into the budget, but also what comes of those outcomes in terms of if we're spending X amount of dollars on this program, what do we expect to see in terms of clients served and overall mission impact? Because when we change our budget and reflect it to fit with the amount of funds that we have available, we have to also think about what that's going to do to our mission impact and the program outcomes. And so how do we really use that together, as well as how to establish the cash reserves for our organization so we can be sustainable over a long period of time. Calculating true program costs. This is really about what does overhead mean and how does that relate to our programs. And I think one of the great questions that we start off with is, do you know how much it costs to provide your services to any one client? So if you had one additional client come in, how much more would that cost your organization? That's really about the true program cost. So it's not just what's directly involved in providing those services, but those other costs in terms of the administration and fundraising that support the organization and allow you to provide those programming. We also talked about the dual bottom line matrix here, which is really a way of looking at what are the mission impacts that go with my programs and what are the financial sustainability of them. Because oftentimes as a nonprofit organization, we have programs that are mission critical and they're really the core of what we do, but by themselves they're not financially sustainable. And so we have to find other programs and other means, like fundraising as one example, but also other programs that do generate a surplus to subsidize it. So looking at how all of our programs fit together is a key part of this session. Managing cash flow. This is moving from looking at historic reports of our budget and how we're doing to looking forward. And by looking forward, we look at what are those impacts on our cash accounts based on the programs that we have and what's coming in and what's coming out. This is where understanding what kind of delays there might occur if we receive government grants, for example. How would that impact our organization? How do we use these cash flow projections to think strategically about what we're doing so we can align our resources in a way that we don't have to cut back on our different programs. And so we'll talk about a lot of different tactics for avoiding and managing those cash flow problems, as well as how cash reserves and credit can be used to improve the cash flow of your organization. The last session, putting the fun into nonprofit finance, we use this term because oftentimes financial topics can be rather intimidating to board members and staff that aren't fluent or work frequently in those themes. And so finding ways to analyze how our organization is doing over a long period of time based on trends and financial ratios, but also the mission impacts, and communicating them in a way that are actually understandable and true. And so we use dashboards as an example for illustrating these things on a single page. What are those core mission impacts that we're looking to reach, and what are those underlying financial metrics that are going to allow us to get there, and finding ways to integrate those together so our conversations with the board, with our staff members, and also with other stakeholders in the community can be heightened, and that building that understanding and connections between one another. So that was really briefly an overview of what we'll be covering in each of the sessions over the course of the next 6 months. What we'll be sending out as a follow-up, in addition to an overview document that goes into a little more depth than what we have today, are 2 articles for thought and discussion. One is on nonprofit life cycle stages, knowing what's normal and what's next. This is a kind of a new concept in the nonprofit organizational field about the types of challenges we have vary significantly based on where we are on this life cycle stage. So as an example, an organization that's been around for 30 years, has a well-known reputation and programs that have been long established, is going to have different types of challenges than one that's a startup nonprofit and is mostly volunteer-led and is now just moving into formalizing those things. And so looking at what life cycle stage we're in can really impact how our finances are going to be used, and also, the types of challenges strategically that we'll be facing. Now, just the age of an organization doesn't define that life cycle stage. As an example, with FCI, we're a very well-established lending organization, but 4 years ago when we started advisory services, that was in a new birth and kind of growth stage. And so looking at the mix of our programs is also an important way to consider it. The second article, the Executive Director's Guide to Financial Leadership, this was written by the leader of a sister organization of ours in Minnesota, Kate Barr, 2 or 3 years ago, and really provides a great overview of the types of topics that we'll be talking about when we get into the financially related sessions, and really what does it mean to be a financial leader as opposed to a financial manager, and how do I take my organization and make it sustainable. This is a great and brief article that really provides some overview on those topics, and we'll be touching on these at the beginning of each session as a group discussion as a way to kind of warm up for what we'll be doing in each of those days. So I've seen that a lot of questions have come in. Tom, would you mind letting us know what are some of the questions that we've had or seen?
Sure. Something that an attendee had mentioned that they wanted to get out of the learning series is that they just would like to learn some useful dashboard metrics, tips on how to build capacity, as well as measuring that capacity use with human resources. So that's great. That's one question, and I don't know if you want to speak on that at all.
Yeah. I think that capacity building and how to build it and how to measure it, that's really the focus of our first session next week. And I think this is a great introduction to looking at your organization strategically, because it takes a picture of where are we in terms of reaching our mission and vision and strategically moving forward. How are our programs working? What areas do we have to improve them and strengthen them? And then kind of sets the tone for what we'll be doing in the next sessions, because you can kind of think, okay, these are the priority areas that fit for my organization. How can I be working on those as we go through these sessions? The using dashboard metrics is what we'll really be talking about and covering in the final session. If you have a dashboard already and you'd like to talk about that at different points, do feel free. We're more than happy to provide resources in advance of the session so that you can get moving and then spend that time reflecting on your progress during the other session. I see another person has posted in their goal in increasing financial understanding and skills to make sound decisions. I think that's a great goal for this session, and that's really our goal for you, is to provide you with those tools to look at your organization and to look at the environment your organization is operating in and find out what do we need to do to become more sustainable in the long term, and what do we need to do to stay solvent in the short term in order to reach that. And I think that's often the challenge that organizations have, is how we balance the massive amount of work and need in terms of delivering our programs with how do we do that in a way that's smart and strategic and will put us into a position to be more stable and secure in the future. And that's really going to be a big part of what we talk about in our second session on strategy, and how do we incorporate these into our organization on a day-to-day basis. And also just broadly, the tools to do that analysis will be provided in the following sessions on the finances. If there are any other questions or logistics, that we'll send out another reminder with all these files shortly, probably tomorrow, with the recording, and you can send that to other staff members or board members that are attending. We only have the contact information for people who submitted the applications, and if they listed their names there. So if you are one of those people who've submitted it but haven't let us know who else will be attending the sessions, please do that in advance. That way we can make the name tags for them, and we can also make sure to use their emails as well so they get the reminder, so it doesn't just go through you and you have to take that extra step to forward it out to them.
There are some organizations who have contacted us and let us know, but there are still some organizations out there that have accepted that they are going to take part in the series, but we'd like to know, like Ben said, who will be there, so we can get that information out to everyone. And this is a list that will be continue to grow throughout the series. As Ben mentioned, we will be sending out reminders and updates and things like that throughout the series. And we want to make sure that we reach out to everyone as quickly as possible, so that it's not on you as the organizer to keep forwarding this information along. Another thing, too, that that we will be doing throughout the series, we will have your very own web page on our website that we will have for the cohort to have. We will have all the presentations that we will be providing throughout the series, all the participant guides, like Ben mentioned, some resources. Some of these resources that Ben had mentioned that will be pre-reading as well. Those will be on that website, so it's kind of a one-stop shop for everything that we have. There is a process for you to go ahead and log in and create a username and password. We want to make sure that that information that we're sharing with you stays, I guess, in-house with everybody who participates, so so you can access that. And like I said, that'll be something that we'll speak about during our first session. So
yeah, great, and thank you, Tom. That's a great reminder. You know, we'll be providing up to 3 copies of printed material for all the participant guides and tools and worksheets that we're doing, but I think having an online resource where you can reference that really helps you use it and apply it for your whole organization and bring it to board meetings and really kind of expanding your ability to use it. Our goal ultimately is to have you be better equipped to make decisions and use these tools, and so you know, we try to do that as best we can through making the resources available. We also have a host of other resources on many different topics that we aren't going to be covering, so please, at any time, if there are other issues you're grappling with or challenges, or if you'd like references or recommendations for other areas, we are more than happy to provide that. I just want to mention again, it's an open door. Our mission is to improve the sustainability and capacity of nonprofit organizations throughout the state, and this is really one of the great ways that we can do it. So please, if you have any questions, let us know. So I don't see any other questions coming through. If there's anything else that comes up between now and next week when we meet, obviously feel free to send us an email or give us a call, and we'll get back to you with it, especially if it's a logistical issue. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you next week and getting the series started. Just as a logistics reminder, the date, August 13th, from 8 to noon at the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, and their address is listed here. Tom, when he sends the follow-up feedback, will provide more details on that. If you do have any other questions, again, feel free to let us know. We're really excited to meet you and start the series. Dennis Johnson, who wasn't able to join us for the webinar today, will also be with us for the session, and we're really excited to be bringing this to Milwaukee.
We'd also just like to reiterate the thank you to our sponsor, the Greater Milwaukee Foundation. Like we said, without their support, we would not be able to provide this training and series for you. So like Ben said, if you come across them, see them during your work lives or anything like that, just make sure to let them know that the appreciation that you have for putting this series on.
Great. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.